The Nutbush Dance is fascinating to me because, like, it's only in the last few years that I realised it was only an Australian thing.
Yeah, like hip hip hooray.
Hip hip hooray, yeah, also. So, okay, Ben Volchok, welcome to Reanimates.
Hi.
But also, American and English listeners, I've realised recently that you guys don't do the hip hip hooray when you do Happy Birthday.
Yeah, just the song finishes, and then for us who have this tradition of saying hip hip hooray after the Happy Birthday song, it feels like you've like driven 80% of the way there, and then you've dropped us off a little bit too far from our house.
It's edging.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay, yeah, for clarification, it's the Happy Birthday song goes, Happy Birthday to you, Happy Birthday to you, Happy Birthday, dear Ben Volchok,
It's not my
Happy birthday to you. And then Australians will go,
Hip,
hip, hooray. Hip, hip,
Well,
hooray.
To clarify, one person, and it's usually the most dominant person
The alpha
of the
male.
group,
Yeah.
will go hip hip, and then the rest of the group, in a call and response fashion, goes
Yes.
hooray.
Yeah.
And then the same person will who has, like, you can't switch hip hip persons. It will be the same person who goes hip hip once again, and then the group once again goes hooray, and then for a third and final time, hip hip hooray. In America, or literally anywhere that sings the Happy Birthday song, I don't think that any other, because they sing the Happy Birthday song in other languages. I don't think I've ever encountered hip hip hooray in any other culture. Except Australia.
It's just one of those fun Australian things.
Yeah.
You know, one of our classic larrikin activities.
Like stopping the boat.
The idea of, like, Australians loving Ned Kelly is really interesting because Ned Kelly was a criminal, which is, you know, fine because, like, he just, like, robbed banks and shit. Like, who cares?
Yeah.
But he also fucking hated cops.
Hated cops.
Whereas Aussies love cops.
It's absolutely. I've thought about that so much. It's like people who worship Ned Kelly are also worshipping the police.
Yeah, and I don't know what they like about Ned Kelly then.
Yeah.
Do they just like that he was kind of like a dick?
He had a beard.
He had a beard.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's part of the Australian spirit.
That's it.
I don't know why we're talking about Australianism because it has nothing to do at all with what we're covering today. What we're actually covering is The Black Cat, which is an episode of Masters of Horror from 2007. So Masters of Horror was this horror anthology show created by Mick Garris, who's done a lot of stuff. I will make mention of a podcast he used to do, I think it's finished up now, called Postmortem, which was just like him interviewing usually like film people. He did a great interview with Jeff on that. I highly recommend chasing it up. Jeff Combs, yes.
Jeff.
The reason we're here. But also Mick Garris wrote Hocus Pocus. Good for him.
I've never seen it.
It's a classic.
He directed Critters 2.
Yep.
He wrote The Fly 2. He wrote Hocus Pocus. And he also directed Nightmare Cinema, which had it was another anthology film.
Yeah, he does a lot of Stephen King adaptations as well, notably. So Masters of Horror is this it's one of those anthologies where every episode is a different usually a horror director. So it's people like Dario Argento, Joe Dante, heaps of people all did it. It's a good series just in general. I recommend getting through all of it. But we're doing this one because obviously it's Jeff, and it is also Jeff reuniting with Stuart Gordon in the directing role. And obviously, if you get Stuart Gordon, you're going to get his writing partner, Dennis Paoli, obviously. So it's back to being a family affair. This episode's from season 2. It's basically the story of the Edgar Allan Poe story, The Black Cat. Did I already say it was Edgar Allan Poe? I can't even remember now.
No, I think we've mentioned that it's The Black Cat and probably just assumed the intelligence of our listeners.
I don't know why I did that. But yes, so if you don't know about it, this is Jeff playing Edgar Allan Poe, famous poet and novelist. This story is basically, the through line is The Black Cat, but it's also interspersed with Poe as the protagonist, because he's not obviously the protagonist in the story, and in his sort of slightly fictionalized life.
It's kind of like the story of The Black Cat is playing out for Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah.
Yeah, as if the story is in his life.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of rebounding in terms of is it real life?
Yeah.
Is this just fantasy? Caught in a landslide, no escape from reality.
Mama just killed my wife.
Look, in fairness, it doesn't appear that he did.
True.
It feels like it briefly.
Should we spoil it? Should we
No.
okay.
No,
spoilers?
give people something to wait for. Keep them on their toes. Assume they haven't seen this.
Assume they haven't seen it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know why you would... Okay, listeners, please message me or tweet, whatever. Do you listen to these episodes when you haven't watched The Thing, or do you only listen to it after you've watched The Thing? Because I very rarely listen to a podcast about a film or TV show if I haven't already watched it.
Yeah, me too. I reckon unless it's like a regular podcast listen, I feel like I would probably listen to the podcast first, because it's almost like I'm just like trying to get through as many of these as I can. But then I don't know, like potentially, I know, some other friends with a film podcast, they'll do the kind of introduction with no spoilers, and then they'll at a certain point be like, okay, right, now we're getting into it. Now it's spoiler time. I don't know. I feel like maybe then my instinct would be, I'm saying this as someone who doesn't really listen to that many podcasts where they talk about stuff that can be spoiled. My instinct would be, if you see what the episode is that's coming up, you watch the film and then you listen to the episode. Yeah.
I guess it depends what it is. Like, I probably wouldn't listen to something if I was worried about spoilers, because I'd be like, well, if they're talking about the movie, it'll probably be enough to be spoilery.
Yeah.
But
do you know what? It was funny. I was just listening to a friend of mine has a podcast where, like, he gets people on to talk about their favorite albums, and someone came on to talk about Stop Making Sense, and there's obviously a film, kind of like filmed concert version of that, and I was worried about spoilers for that because I haven't listened to the album and seen the film. Like, it's a concert film.
Yeah.
Why was I anxious?
It's not like 3/4 of the way through a Talking Head concerts, they like kill someone. And it turns into a national scandal. Yeah,
twist. This was a snuff concert.
I don't look. I know David Byrne's a little kooky. I don't think he would. But
no.
So this collaboration inspired, I'm sure you as Jeff heads in the audience know, inspired Jeff to create a one-man show called Nevermore, where he played Edgar Allan Poe in sort of like, it was like an evening with Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah, right. Because it's like the Mark Twain one that I think Hal Holbrook used to do. It was like an evening with Mark Twain.
Yeah, and it's, like this episode was incredibly well received, so it makes sense that he would do more with it. So I think the play was in 2009, also directed by Stuart Gordon.
Yeah, right.
And I think he brought it back like some years later, maybe a decade later. Annoyingly, it was never filmed in full. I did read in an interview with Jeff that I think that was Stuart Gordon's fault. R.I.P. Stuart Gordon, but fuck you. Because when the idea of filming it was broached, he wanted to make it like cinematic, like a film. And then they were like, how the fuck do you do that?
Sure.
And then so it just never happened. But there is a full audio version, I think, on Audible somewhere.
Yeah, okay.
Highly recommend it because, if you've seen this episode of Masters of Horror, you know that this is a really good character for Jeff. This is a really fun time. He's very good at it. But obviously we'll get into that.
He's really relishing it. I guess the other thing to mention is this is the second time that they've worked on a Poe story, the other one being The Pit and the Pendulum, which I haven't seen, but I've seen the Roger Corman version of The Pit and the Pendulum with Vincent Price, and that's pretty good.
I believe The Pit and the Pendulum I covered with Timothy Clark on some time ago.
Hi, Tim.
Hi past Tim.
Hi past Tim.
It opens, so this episode opens on what it says is a Poe quote, but I don't believe it is. So the quote that comes up on the screen is perversity, the human thirst for self-torture. So I looked this up because I was like, that's a weirdly like succinct quote.
Yeah,
like, that's
actually, it's been misattributed to Edgar Allan Poe. It's actually Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah. It's actually George Orwell.
George Orwell, Einstein.
This is, I think, the bastardized version of it from an 1846 essay he wrote called The Philosophy of Composition, where he just talks about writing. So the bit in the essay is, quote, "The raven addressed answers with its customary word, nevermore, a word which finds immediate echo in the melancholy heart of the student, who, giving utterance aloud to certain thoughts suggested by the occasion, is again startled by the fowl's repetition of nevermore. The student now guesses the state of the case, but is impelled, as I have before explained, by the human thirst for self-torture, and in part by superstition." End quote. But if you go to the story of the Black Cat, the narrator in that says perversity is, quote, one of the primitive impulses of the human heart, one of the indivisible primary faculties which give direction to the character of man. So it's not really a quote.
It's an amalgamation
of a few different things.
One of which is just the word perversity.
Yeah. It's interesting that Edgar Allan Poe, I think in general, has this reputation as this sort of incredibly dark,
the original goth,
perverse figure. You know, if you're going to say not that there's no truth in that, but the real truth is just he's just very sad.
Yeah.
Like when you read his work, some of it is like the Raven's quite eerie. Obviously, like the Black Cat is very spooky. A lot of it's very horror-y, but most of it is just about grief.
Yeah, I guess like the fall of the House of Usher.
Yeah,
is very much just that.
Yeah, and like obviously like the cask of Amontillado. Oh my god, is that how you even pronounce it?
Amontillado.
Like that's obviously like a horror story. Telltale Heart, that's a horror story.
Yeah. But even then, like that's about someone dying and being kept alive and coming back to haunt them.
I think that there's a quote, and it's not a, I'm not going to get it exactly right, but I think that there's a quote from Edgar Allan Poe where he talks about, basically the worst thing that you can like the greatest grief is the loss of like a beautiful woman, basically.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, that's why like so much of his poetry, especially, is about like
friend zoning.
No, lost like death.
Oh, right, okay.
like not lost to friend zone, lost to cholera.
Lost to cholera.
A lot of that around at the time.
It's very melancholy.
Yes, yeah. So it's often more sad than it is scary, but it can be both.
It can be both, or it can just be kooky, like the one about is it the Dr. Tar and Feather? Do you know that one? It's a short story about someone going to a lunatic asylum and talking to all the doctors, and it turns out that the doctors are actually... No, I won't spoil it.
Oh, now I want to know.
It's what you'd expect, really, about that kind of story. But it's that just seems like it's just like, one of those like Twilight Zone-y tales of the unexpected, sort of like, and then the house had its roof on the floor.
Oh my god! And then it turns out they were all ghosts.
Yeah. Or just like, the animal was him in a past life.
Yeah.
And come back, it's just
turns out it was Hitler. There's a lot of good art in the opening credits of this. A lot of it looked very like it's all Poe related artwork. But it all looked very gory, like as in Edward Gorey, Edward.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it all looked very in his style, which I
remember that.
Quite enjoyed. So there's not a huge amount of characters. This is mainly centered around Poe and his wife Virginia,
who's also his cousin.
It is also his cousin. Look, we could talk a bit about this. The relationship between Poe and his young wife Virginia, contentious because I think she was maybe 13 or 14 when they got married, and he was in his late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah.
And also first cousins. So, not that I'm defending these practices at all, but to me, it seemed to be more of a marriage of convenience.
Right.
Because neither of these parties were particularly well off financially. Marriage in that day seemed to be more about economic reasons. So, I think that in his own way, he wanted to take care of Virginia, and the only way to do that maybe could have been to like enter into a marriage so that he could support her financially.
Right. Not even like a guardianship.
I don't know what existed in the 1820s or 30s.
I reckon they had like guardianships.
But like so one of the things that you notice in this episode is that he calls her Sissy, which is a real thing that he did. He called her as like a pet name as Sissy because the talk was often that they had this more like brother-sister relationship.
Yeah.
And obviously there's not as much talk about like consummating the marriage and stuff like that. There is a little bit of passion in this episode, which I think was just creative license because obviously we know that Poe like loved Virginia, but we don't know if this was like a romantic and sexual relationship. Yeah.
Some of the characters comment on it in the film. They're like, this could be good for Georgia, but not so good for New England.
Yes, I believe the exact quote is, so yeah, he's reading poetry to her. For all intents and purposes, this is fairly fictionalized, but there is a little bit of truth into it based on, Poe biography and stuff. There is a cat here that he doesn't like. That becomes important.
Remember at the start when we were talking about how this episode is called The Black Cat.
Yeah.
Well, you just think about that this currently is a black cat that has turned up. Remember that.
What's this cat going to do? What's he going to get up to?
Kooky character.
I reckon he's going to get up to a bit of a mischief.
I reckon the cat's going to be important later.
I reckon the cat's going to turn out to be Hitler.
Marilyn Monroe.
So Jeff, he gets undressed, and kisses Virginia, played by Elise Levesque. She's done a lot of stuff, but I know her, and I guess most people would, as Charity, who was Adam Brody's character's wife in Ready or Not, and she is much better in that than she is in this. Look, she's still quite young.
Many years have passed.
Yes, I think her acting has gotten substantially better because she's a real bitch in Ready or Not, but she's quite good at it. Like all the characters in Ready or Not. Like, I don't know if you've seen it, but I
haven't.
Oh, it's great. It's so much fun. She's fine in this.
Okay.
But also, it's one of those things where the character isn't given a huge amount to do. She's just like sickly wife.
Yeah. Pretty much. She exists to be a burden for Edgar Allen Poe, for his anxieties to loom large.
Well, yes, she is a burden, but also the love of his life.
That's right.
It's complicated.
The heart is a
relationships are
heavy organ.
Famously. She coughs up blood on the pillow.
Uh-oh.
Always a bad sign.
Yeah.
Yeah. Coughing into the handkerchief comes back red with blood. That's bad, no matter which way you put it.
Yeah. Well, best case scenario, you just got a loose tooth. Still expensive.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. 19th century? Fucking, you might as well put yourself out to pasture then.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. My tooth fell out. Well, shoot me in the head.
Kind of just put you in a home and let you live out the best years of your life in a secluded attic somewhere.
Speaking of the rich history of Australian convicts, my sort of ancestors, as far as I've gone back, because someone in my family did the Australian side of my family, the family tree. The records of the first Englishman to come here, based on like our line, obviously he was transported for burglary. Long line of criminals I come from. And he died in the Kew Asylum of, quote, brain disease. That could be anything.
It could be anything from like syphilis to depression.
Yeah. Like when you look up, the different reasons that people died in that, because I guess this was like 1880s or 1890s. Yeah, brain disease could have literally just been like alcoholism or epilepsy.
Sure.
Just anything they didn't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could totally have been psychosis or, it could have just been...
Yeah. Could have just had a headache.
Could have been migraines.
Yeah. And
brain disease. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Could have just been like addicted to watching every single film of one particular actor.
If loving Jeffrey Combs is wrong, I don't want to be right. Yeah.
Brain worms, more like brain combs.
Yep. If you crack open my skull, it's just full of tiny combs.
Little Jeffs running around.
Me, like little lemmings, like
Yeah.
running up and down the nerves of my brain.
Yeah, or like Osmosis Jones.
Osmosis Jeff, yeah.
Yeah, Osmosis Jeffs.
Yeah.
Osmosis Combs.
Oh, that is what the inside of my brain looks like. Hey, lock me up. Throw away the key. There's a fun scene where he's meeting with the head of a newspaper trying to sell his poetry. And the editor is being like, leave the poetry to the women. Give us more fantastic tales of terror. And he imagines choking him to death. That's quite fun.
I am quite partial to a fake out violent outburst.
Yes.
There's something about them that's just like, you were just thinking about it.
Yeah, you were just imagining it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fun, especially, when it like snaps you back to reality.
Yeah. I think it kind of sets up, like, it's a fun little, quirky turn of the scene, but I think it also sets up the rest of the episode, which does really heavily blur reality with what's going on in his head.
Poe gets drunk, as was often his wont. Not making a lot of friends with his behavior, as you might imagine, as a sort of slightly self-aggrandizing alcoholic.
It was not just an alcoholic. He was also poor and couldn't pay for his bar tab or had a lot of debts. And
yes. He does make this fun bet with the barman, where he says, a bottle of your finest port if I can stand on one finger. And they're all like, oh, Edgar, what are you even talking about? You fool. And he's like, I can do it. And he's like, all right. So, he's trying to get the barman to like point out a spot on the floor, like, where do you want me to stand? And he's like, there. Where? There. And as the barman is pointing to the spot on the floor where he points out, Poe stands on his finger and says, ha, you didn't say it had to be my finger. Oh,
You didn't
Poe.
say which finger.
Yeah. What a card.
I've heard of that, but it's usually standing on your own finger. But in this case, he stood on the other guy's finger, but he didn't just stand on it. He like stamped on it.
Yeah.
And almost like it seemed like he broke the other guy's finger.
Yeah.
Which then resulted in him not winning the bet, but getting thrown out of the bar.
Cartoonishly thrown out.
Yeah.
It was like a hoik out into the trash.
Into the barrels, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. It would have been funnier if he had popped out of the trash with like a fish bone in his teeth.
Like an old cat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of cats, the Poe house has a lot of animals.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't know what the pet situation was in the 19th century. I don't know if people had pets, because one of the pets that they have is a goldfish in a bowl, which seems so modern.
Yeah.
Because it's weird to have like a lovely orange goldfish in a cartoony bowl on the piano, but then also have cholera.
Yeah.
Like,
True.
it seems anachronistic.
I feel like we have a lot of this like just conception of how things were, and when stuff comes up that's like would not make sense for stuff to exist at the same time. Like there's that famous thing of like Abraham Lincoln existing at the same time as like the last of the samurais were happening.
Oh,
and
yeah,
then,
yeah.
Then, but then also like one of the first fax machines. And there's like a meme, and it's like, oh, Abraham Lincoln could have sent a samurai a fax.
Oh yeah, there's also the fact that Coca-Cola was invented before Bram Stoker wrote Dracula. So theoretically, Dracula could have like popped a can of Coke in his book. So yeah, there is things like that, and how it's kind of what's that fact about how like ancient Egypt.
Yeah.
Like the period of ancient Egypt is so long that like Cleopatra is closer to us than she is to like the pyramids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or it's the same with the dinosaurs. It's like we're closer to brontosauruses than T-Rexes or something.
Yeah.
Than they were to T-Rexes.
Time is
something
fucked.
like
It's
that.
so weird. Yeah, so they've got Pluto the cat, they've got a bird, little canary, and a goldfish. Virginia is playing the piano for Poe and some man who was supposed to buy it. She's singing a lovely, beautiful song. Poe looks on adoringly, but sadly because he knows he has to sell the piano because he can't afford to take care of her. And then Virginia coughs up a bunch of blood all over the lovely piano. A lot of blood, too.
A lot of blood.
Way more than is, like, ideal.
Yeah. If I saw that much blood on a piano, I would wipe it.
I probably wouldn't buy the piano.
Because the tuberculosis could have seeped into the minor keys.
I would get out of there. I'd feel bad.
Yeah.
But I'd also be like, I can't get TB.
I would rinse my sinuses immediately. I would do a sinus rinse.
You would do a neti pot,
Yeah.
Straight out.
Right, absolutely.
There's a great Poe quote from real life that I thought of during this where he wrote a letter to a friend while Virginia was very sick, where he says, I'm constitutionally sensitive, nervous in a very unusual degree. I became insane with long intervals of horrible sanity.
Wow.
That's
brain
good.
disease.
Yeah. Isn't life the greatest brain disease of all?
I mean, it's very many other diseases as well. I find... That's another quote from Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah, Edgar Allan Poe famously said, what's up with that?
What's the deal?
What's the deal with
feeling
cholera?
Always really sad.
Yeah. Hey, have you ever noticed? When you wall up a man after luring him down into your basement for cognac?
It's like walling up your emotions. Hey, have you ever noticed how suddenly the will to live just disappears, and occasionally you see glimpses of it far away? What's the
deal with that? Yeah. Have you ever noticed how people in Philadelphia drive their horse and buggy like this?
Whereas people in Baltimore
drive like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever noticed that the Bronx is dangerous?
Hey, I'm perambulating here.
I'm perambulating. I'm strolling here. Hey, I'm taking a sojourn here.
Hey, I'm ambling through the graveyard here.
Yeah, because there's so much traffic in the graveyard.
Yeah, a lot of people dying in the 19th century.
Yeah, it's true. A lot of car crashes.
Be very busy.
Buggy.
Very buggy
Like
with all
the
the sickness.
leeches.
Yeah. Like there's a lot of scenes where, they sort of turn out to be fantasy. One of them is Poe smashing up the piano.
Oh, yeah.
Which is like this powerful sort of emotional act in the script. But it is silly if you thought about it in reality.
Very noisy.
Well, he needs to sell it. It's the only
Yeah.
thing they have that's worth any fucking money.
But I guess he's just kind of like, well, if I can't have it, then no. If my wife can't play this, then no one shall have it.
Exactly. It's a metaphor for my crumbling sense of self.
Yeah, I don't know that he was. I don't know that it's a plot hole to his irrationality. I don't think there's a plot hole here.
No, I don't think there's any plot holes here, for instance. I think it's all just madness upon madness.
Yeah.
So he's... Who's that?
A supervillain in something I wrote once, probably.
It is I,
Edgar Allen Poe.
Edgar Allen Poe.
No, who is it? There's someone. Oh yeah. It's a I think in a show I did once, it was Doctor, an evil doctor. It was like, Dr. Onions.
I like him. He sounds fun.
Yes, it is I.
I hope he comes back.
What, in this?
Yeah. Just pops up intermittently. Yeah.
Sure.
This whole scene is really interesting, though. Like,
Wait,
Jeff,
too soon.
this whole scene is good. Jeff is like getting annoyed and stressed out because he's trying to write. But he does want to take care of Virginia, but like her persistent cough is driving him crazy. Which, when you've ever lived with someone when they've been sick, it's fair. Poe finds his beloved canary dying. I think the cat has clearly attacked it. And he has to put it out of his misery quite sort of viscerally. He has to like crush it in his big hand.
Has to.
Well, what are you going to do? Give it a lethal injection?
Flush it down the toilet.
It's a canary. No toilets. Did they have toilets in the 1880s?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Throw it out the window. Wouldn't that be the most ironic way to kill a bird?
I don't know about historical plumbing, Ben. I
They
don't
had
know.
windows.
Well, they have windows, yes. I don't know what the toilet situations were
They
like.
had. No, they would have had toilets. Surely, like they weren't throwing their waste out a window. They were throwing birds out a window.
Yeah.
They were. I don't know. They surely not. I think they had. They must have had plumbing. They would have had plumbing.
I didn't see a toilet in this episode. Therefore, they don't
Therefore,
exist.
yeah.
He sort of snaps when he sees the cat sitting on Virginia's chest. He starts wrestling about with it, eventually gouges its eye out with a little penknife. I didn't like that.
Yeah,
like a little kitty. I didn't like it.
It's not the best, short story to be adapted for if you don't love animal cruelty.
Yeah. I mean, obviously this was made in 2007, so none of the animal cruelty is real, hopefully. There is a fun little nod. I don't think it's a deliberate nod to Herbert West, but if you're a Jeff freak like me, you'll pick it up where
Jeffrey Combs is in the episode.
Jeffrey Combs is in it. Yeah. That's the
reference.
eagle-eyed viewers will notice. But when Virginia finds the cat and he only has one eye, he's like, oh no, another cat came in and he was like that when I found him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah.
Look, that's probably a reference.
That's like Reanimator.
Yeah.
You know that movie?
That you love.
Nah, I hate it.
You want to be bride of Reanimator.
Famously, I hate Reanimator. I've never liked it.
Yeah,
never
you love every other Jeffrey Combs film, but hate Reanimator.
Yeah. I love Satanic, but I hate Reanimator.
Yeah, Snide and Prejudice.
My favorite.
Yum.
That was my favorite.
But Reanimator sucks fucks.
Yeah. It sucks a big old reanimated dick.
Yeah.
Oh, not even as a joke. I don't like that. No. So for some... Hello. Hello, Doctor.
Yes, it is I. I have returned, and I am more evil than ever. Would you like a leech in your orifice?
No, don't, Dr. Onions. I don't like it.
Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.
I'll see you
I'll be
later.
back.
No doubt, yeah. So for some...
Hello. I'm back again.
Oh, no.
Okay, I'll go.
What have I summoned? So for someone...
Hello. It's me. It is I. I have returned so quickly. Sorry, I forgot my keys.
Okay. Oh, there they are.
Yes, there they are. Jingle jangle.
Yeah, you got everything now?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
Wallet, phone, keys. Yes, and my onions.
Yep.
And my leeches. Oh no, I left my leeches here.
Oh, okay.
I need them for my next victim. I'm impatient.
Okay, you got it.
Yes, okay, bye-bye now.
All right. Sound effect of door closing. Sound effect of locking door. Sound effect of pulling curtains.
Yeah, hello.
No.
Sorry, me again. I'm here to peek a microphone.
No. So you're outside of the house now.
Sorry, okay, bye-bye.
It's improv rules. I've locked you out.
Sound of car starting. Sound of engine putting away.
Sound of relieved person inside the house.
Hello, it's me. I'm back. I migrated.
How did you get here so quickly, though?
Oh, well, because I started the car and just pushed it. And actually, I was here in the driveway the whole time.
Oh, no.
Yes, I was waiting for an opportune moment to make you think I was gone.
Oh.
But actually, I was still here. Hello. Actually, I've forgotten my black cat. It's here. I swear it had two eyes when I left it. What did you do?
That's how it was when I found it.
All right. I'll take your word for it, but I'll be back.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Yep. Okay.
Hello.
No.
Okay, fine.
All right. Settle down, Doctor. We've got to cover this.
Okay.
For someone on death's door, Virginia gets up to argue about the cat, which
Hello.
is a disastrous mistake.
No, all right, I'll stop.
I'm trying to close the door on the Doctor. She collapses to the floor and ostensibly dies. At her funeral...
Hello.
Sorry. You've started something.
Oh, no.
No. All right. He's away. He's gone.
Okay. So at her funeral...
No.
No.
It's gone. It's too far.
Okay.
All right.
So at her funeral, there's a couple of... So at her funeral, there's the couple of like bitchy guys that we were talking about before who were talking shit about Poe.
One of whom is, I think, the editor.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, they're like, oh, it's weird that she's young and also his cousin.
Yeah.
I think that the line is...
She's so young. So very young. A mere girl. And his cousin. An acceptable match in Richmond. But this is Philadelphia.
Rude, I think.
Yeah. Also, Richmond, Virginia, and her name is Virginia.
I didn't even put that together.
Wow.
Hello.
So-
Did someone say doctor?
No.
Okay, I must have misheard. I'll be back.
No, I said duck dog. That's what I said.
Oh, I shouldn't be here then.
No, you're not a duck dog. You're a man, I guess. He does freak out and force everyone out of the house, though. He has this slight freak out. Plans to hang himself with a rope that is way too narrow and weak. Like, it's like twine.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not going to work, mate. It works fine for what he plans to do, which is to hang the cat.
The cat.
Yep.
Fake out.
Yeah, that's... Yeah, he gets very mad at the cat and hangs it. Horrible sounds as well. He decides to burn the house down. He does a little bit of poetry before that.
We stand on the brink of a precipice. We peer into the abyss. We grow sick and dizzy. We plot.
Amazingly, amongst the flames, Virginia awakes. Pretty bad on like the medical examiner's parts to have been like, oh, nah, she's probably dead. And then she's fine.
She's fine, which just kind of reinforces the whole "is this real? What's happening?" kind of vibes of the episode. I think that was one of the moments where I was like, "Was I not paying attention? What happened to her?" And then I realized it was sort of like a deliberate,
fantastical sort of thing.
It was a very convincing funeral.
Yeah, I mean, looked like what I imagine funerals in that time look like. We cut to this great scene, actually, of Poe. He gets kicked out of another bar. And he's walking home hearing sort of cat yowls all around him. And there's this beautiful shot of where he's walking sort of down the street and there's this sort of giant haunting cat shadow following him. Good job, Stuart. That was a nice shot. He returns home. Virginia's still there, but she's still sick. I definitely assumed at the time that he had just imagined her waking up.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, but she's back. And there is also a new cat.
New wife, new cat.
New wife.
Me.
Sometimes you just got to move on. Get a new wife. Get a new cat.
That's right. It's the same wife, it's different cat.
Well, ostensibly it's a different cat, but Virginia does say it looks like Pluto, but has a white ring around the neck. And then Jeff says this.
You're right, it's not Pluto. Look at this white patch, see? It goes all around his neck. Like a collar.
Or a noose.
Stop it, Eddie.
Jeff's accent comes and goes a bit in this.
Yeah.
I think in the live show it's a bit more straight Southern, because that's the thing about Poe is that he was born in Boston, but he spent most of his years in Virginia. But he did also move around a lot. Like he joined the army. I think he went to Europe briefly.
I cannot imagine Edgar Allan Poe in the army.
Well, I think he just did it because financially he had no other options.
Yeah.
But he moved around a lot. So I think, obviously, we don't know what kind of an accent he has. And we also just don't know, like, what did a quote-unquote Southern accent sound like in the 19th century versus now?
I'm sure there's recordings. Because the 19th century, people born in the 19th century would have been around when the first recordings were being made. So there is a way, there are probably ways of telling what Southerners
I
from
suppose.
that time sounded like.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, because I don't know when the first sort of like recordings were being made. I thought that was early 1900s.
Yeah, but then if you think about it, the 19th century, right? Like someone even born in like 1850 would have been
Theoretically, yeah.
In a state to record.
Yeah, I think that Poe was already dead before there was any kind of, because I think he died in
Pretty young, didn't he?
I think he died when he was in his 40s, but I think he died in I want to say the 1850s, I think, or 1846 maybe. I'm not good with dates. Okay, this is the thing I don't understand about American accents necessarily, because the accent that we think of as like a Southern accent, like Foghorn Leghorn, you know. I was watching something where I think it was maybe SNL, which is not obviously the best indication, but there was an episode called Maine Justice, which was meant to be full of characters set in Maine. And the way they were talking, I'm like, is that how people talk in Maine?
All right now. Okay, y'all take a seat. Y'all take a seat right here, right now. All right, here we go. I'm about to serve up a heaping spoonful of Maine justice, you hear?
They all sounded like Foghorn Leghorn.
Yeah, right. I always thought Maine was more like New England, more of the kind of like, I don't even know, like
Boston, Blue Bloods, like JFK.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of interesting like regional accents, because then again, like sometimes you hear people from Alabama or like places that you think would have very strong accents, and they just have a very normal, quote unquote normal accent.
Yeah, I mean, there's some people just have a little bit less of a noticeable like regional accent. I'm gonna Google what did Edgar Allan Poe sound like. According to Reddit, it says it's assumed he spoke with a slight southern drawl, and because he lived so much in Richmond, and because of rhymes he used which would make sense in that accent.
Ah, of course, when you look at the writing, yeah.
Like, apparently he, for example, rhymes sister with vista. Like, removing the R is a big southern thing, but it's also a big Boston thing. So...
Sister Vista, yeah.
Sister.
So Poe goes into some sort of like basement that there must be in this apartment building.
Yeah.
To do away with the beast cat, he starts following her around with an axe. Virginia eventually accosts him. And as he's chasing around the cat, Virginia picks it up to protect it, and in his fervor to attack the cat, he axes her in the head.
Uh-oh.
No!
Whoops.
Whoopsie doodle.
Butterfingers.
That's not on, I'm going to say.
I think it's really outdated behavior.
So it's a very Stuart Gordon moment, this like Virginia flailing about with an axe in her face. I believe Greg Nicotero did the special effects for this, which that's what it looks like. And he does what anyone would do in this instance, where he is so afraid of being found out for his fairly apparently accidental crime. He breaks apart the brick wall in the basement, pops his beloved in there to conceal her crime, and patches it up a treat. I mean, you would, wouldn't you?
It's very Cask of Amontillado.
Poe's descent into madness is interrupted by a couple of cops, though, looking into some screams from his room. I wouldn't have thought that cops would go just investigating people screaming. This is the 1800s. People are screaming for some reason.
Well, absolutely. You had a doctor visiting you with leeches.
Or
Or onions.
Or
And I tuberculosis was rife. Everyone was coughing and screaming. It was,
in pain all the time.
yeah.
So they go looking in his room. The cops are satisfied having searched his room and they leave. And then he calls them back.
He one more questions himself.
Yeah. He's like, "Oh, you didn't check the basement." What is
Like masochistic. It's like he's like edging himself on getting away. He's
Yeah.
like, "Oh no, I bet I could get away better." It's almost like he wants to be caught, but he's like, "No, I reckon I could not be caught, but like do it even closer. I could make it an even closer escape."
Is that also what happens in the Telltale Heart? Because isn't the Telltale Heart, he conceals the
yeah,
heart.
I think the heart gives him away, but I don't think he's like calling them back.
He's not confident about it.
I don't know if he calls them back in the story. I think in the story they just check the basement and find it.
That makes
I'm
sense.
also thinking of the adaptation that Dario Argento did with Harvey Keitel.
Very good.
In that one, he pretends it's over a longer period of time that she's missing. It's not like there's screams and
Yeah, it's like
come and-
weeks.
Yeah, and he pretends that she's gone off to a concert or something, or she's left him.
Yeah.
And
There's
it's-
a very funny scene in that where he cobbles together like a mannequin in his car so that his neighbors think she's in there.
That's right. I remember that. And he pretends going on a holiday with his wife who's dead.
Yeah.
But yeah, in that one, I'm pretty sure he doesn't call them back. I'm pretty sure the cops just come and they're just walking around the place and they're just about to leave when they're like, "Oh, maybe we should do the basement."
Yeah. Well, he makes it worse for himself because he starts rabbiting on about how strong the walls are.
Yeah.
He's like, yes, fine foundations. And then screams begin coming from inside the walls. You don't want to hear that. It's a bad sign.
I think if you've got screams coming from your walls, who are you going to call?
Dr. Onions.
You've been summoned.
Oh no, what did I do?
You summoned me is what you did.
Oh no, how do I put you back in the bottle?
I wasn't in a bottle. I was in an onion.
I was in a car. I
was in a
drove
car.
here.
I ran after my car that I pushed.
Oh, it got all the way to Warrnambool that I had to chase it.
Yes, I'm a very fast runner.
I run on my feet, which are also onions.
I've got quick legs,
They're very small, close to the ground.
and so I can make pitter-patter steps, but they're also lightning quick.
We have turned into a 1940s British
We're in the
radio
Goon
show.
Yeah, we're in the Goon Show now.
Yeah. There is a funny. I'll make a GIF of it, but there's a very funny sort of
Geoffrey Combs.
I'll make a Geoffrey Combs for it, where one cop is breaking open the wall and Poe and the other cop are just looking at each other. It's funny. You had to be there. Of course, when they look into the wall, what are you going to see? The screams that they hear are coming from the dreaded cat who was walled up in there alongside Virginia's very obviously murdered body. Uh-oh.
And then Poe runs
He
away.
just runs out, yeah. He just runs screaming from the basement. He hides in his room, and then he's kind of like, "Oh, where are the cops? They should have been chasing me by now." And then hears coughing. Who could that be? Sees Virginia arise from the bed, looking not as consumptive. But she's fine, and he's so ever so happy to see her. Pluto's back with 2 eyes.
No mark around the neck.
No mark around the neck. He's very happy because he believes himself now to not be insane. Although you'd think it'd be the opposite because you have imagined things.
That's psychosis, my friend.
Yeah. It's like whether or not this did happen, you thought it all did.
Yeah. It's a hell of a drug. It's like VR.
Yeah.
It's like those episodes of Red Dwarf.
Yeah, he's just like wandering around being like, how can I even trust reality?
Yeah.
Yeah. But he's fine because he has a fabulous idea for a new story that he is Inspiration. He writes it up. He's got Virginia over his shoulder. He's got the cat. Can't remember if they got a new goldfish. But it is called,
or a canary.
of course, The Black Cat.
The Black Cat by Edgar Allan Poe. The end.
The end. And everybody lived happily ever after.
Yeah.
Except for everybody in the story
Yeah, pretty much.
who died pretty horribly.
And young.
The story, I don't know if you or dear listener, if you know much about Edgar Allan Poe's death, very famously controversial death.
Was it?
Well, nobody really knows how he died. There's a lot of mystery surrounding it.
Wow.
He just kind of like, they found him sort of I think he was wandering the streets, or maybe he was in a bar and he was all disheveled and he was wearing clothes that didn't look like they were his. And I think they put him into like a hospital or an asylum at some point. And, you know, he couldn't tell people like where he'd been for like several days. And then he eventually like just passed away, and like no one, like there's no good like record of how he died.
Like cause of death or anything.
Yeah. And one of the things that they thought was because he was so like disheveled and kind of fucked up and his clothes were really shabby, which was apparently not like him.
Yeah.
They thought that maybe he was a victim of, I think it's called cooping, which at the time was because he died during an election. And one of the things that apparently people used to do is like these like these gangs would like kidnap people and force them to vote numerous times for the same candidates.
Yeah, right.
And like they do this bullshit cartoony stuff of like dressing them up in disguises and stuff.
Oh, interesting. Because I've heard the thing of people going around and giving fake, like going around from town to town and like giving fake names of dead people.
Yeah.
To bolster votes, but I haven't heard of this.
Yeah, which is, it does sound very odd. And they're like, well, that would explain why he was wearing these clothes that didn't seem like they were his, and he was very disheveled and stuff. But there's a lot of mystery surrounding it.
Whoa, could even write a short story about it.
I don't have the gothic nuance.
Oh, you could try.
All right.
The Death of Edgar Allan Poe.
Once upon a time.
Nah, bad start.
All right. It was a dark and stormy night.
Closer.
All right. There was a dark and stormy night.
Whoa.
Oh,
Revolutionary.
he was hot.
Okay. Next.
There's the whole line by line. All
Yeah.
right. There was a dark and stormy night, and he was really hot.
Who was?
The dark and stormy night.
Oh, sorry, the night. Okay.
Yeah. And he travelled from town to town.
The night.
The night.
Oh, I get it. Yep. That was a night.
He travelled from town to town, voting in elections under false names.
Okay.
And then they found him, and they tried to hang him in the town square, but because it was a night, he was wearing armour, and he slipped right out of it and ran away.
Cool.
He was just like, yoink, and he just slipped out of the noose.
Where does Poe come into all this?
Oh, he was just around. He was just there. Yeah. He was watching. I think he probably made like a few little comments here and there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this might need a little bit of work.
No, it's perfect.
Publish it?
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
Contact the New Yorker.
Lisa picks up phone. Hello, publishing house.
Hello, Stuart Gordon. You're back alive and want to direct my adaptation?
Oh, Stuart Gordon, did I imagine your death? I knew it. Oh, it'd be nice to bring back Stuart. Let's reanimate Stuart Gordon.
Hey,
dig
there
him
we
up.
go. Hey, Jeff. Lisa's phone rings. I heard you were reanimating someone, and my friend Stu. Well, let's do it.
You know that sound you've been looking for.
You know that dead body you've been looking for.
So yeah, that's the Black Cat.
There you are.
I liked it. I really like how it was a really nice thing to see Jeff doing to play this character. That's like, because obviously he plays characters who are villainous sometimes. Sometimes they're sort of a bit pathetic. You know, I'm thinking of someone like Crawford Tillinghast. Whereas Jeff's Poe is kind of like, you know, violent, but also like quite, melancholy, introspective, quite sad.
Yeah, there's a lot of Edgar Allan woe. Mm-hmm. Certainly, not like a fiendish, like premeditated kind of villain. He's more like a throes of agony kind of monster, I guess. If you can call it him. I mean, he goes slowly mad. I also quite like that it was, you know, the two other Stuart Gordon things that I've seen were the Reanimator and From Beyond, and they're like, you know, I'd call them a bit zany.
Yeah, they're a bit wacky.
They're a bit, you know, off their rocker. But this was a little bit more grounded. Even though, you know, there was madness, there was questioning reality, there was, you know, gore and the rest of it. It was still a lot more grounded, and maybe the period piece nature of it helped, but I quite like the sort of change of pace of the setting and the style.
Well, yeah, because it's almost entirely about grief and the sort of melancholy of Poe's existence, which, you know, when you read about, it's like he was like relatively well known in his time, but he wasn't the kind of famous that he is now, where he is, you know, immediately associated with a certain whole period of literature. So, you know, it is one of those, it's like the Vincent van Gogh thing of like this incredible artist that you only really, that was only appreciated, you know, like decades and centuries down the line, and wasn't appreciated in their own time, and just sort of, you know, lived terribly or, you know, wasn't able to enjoy the spoils of their success at the time of their lives. Yeah. And also just a generally kind of like depressive personality, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's not a great combo.
No, you don't want to be a struggling writer and also be a depressive alcoholic as well. That's.
I mean, they tend to go hand in hand sometimes.
Well, you know, you gotta lubricate the wheels of genius sometimes, and sometimes the only way to do that is with port.
Yeah.
Or delicious cognac.
Sherry. Rum.
Name
beer.
more drinks.
Yeah. Vermouth. Vodka.
Absinthe.
Makes the heart grow. Gin.
Yeah.
Drambuie.
Kahlua.
Sambuca.
Baileys.
Limoncello.
Frangelico.
Oh, now we're talking. Wine.
Oh. Vodka Cruiser.
Martini.
UDL. Yeah.
God. Non-alcoholic beer.
Cocksucking cowboy shots.
I don't know what that is.
That is a little shot that's like split in two, and I think it's Kahlua and Baileys. I think it's like two milky things. Okay. Gross.
So just like it's like a shot of tiramisu.
It's just like a shot of diarrhea a lot of the time. Yeah, it's terrible for your guts.
That sounds awful. Jaeger bomb.
Oh, Jaeger bombs. Ugh. You know what I used to do when I was in my early 20s? I have no idea why I started doing this.
Jump fences and look for cats.
No. Well, not that I recall. But I used to drink Jägermeister with orange juice.
Okay. So it's like a Jaeger sunrise.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have no idea why I started, because I used to go to like alternative nightclubs and stuff, and obviously the drinks are much cheaper back in this day.
And so you would find alternatives to well-known drinks.
Yeah, well, because I was like, you know, I don't want like a shitty $2 pot of beer. I'm going to get a nice fun cocktail, because at the time they would have been like $8 or something. I would have Jaeger and orange. I have no idea why.
I mean, I don't drink, and even that sounds horrid.
Oh, it sounds. I do drink it. It sounds horrid now. Like if I smell Jägermeister now, I have to run in the opposite direction. So yeah, that's The Black Cat.
The Black Cat by Edgar Allan Poe by Stuart Gordon.
It's a very good story. I highly recommend. If you've never read any Edgar Allan Poe, I highly recommend getting into it.
A lot of those ones. I'm pretty sure the only Poe that I've read is stuff that I have wanted to watch the film of. So like, The Pit and the Pendulum, The Mask of the Red Death, Fall of the House of Usher, stuff like that. They're all quite good.
I remember getting into Edgar Allan Poe because of The Simpsons.
Oh yeah.
Because in one of the early Treehouse of Horrors, they did The Raven, and they just did I think it's season 2 maybe. They just do The Raven starring The Simpsons, and it's great. It's like everyone's really good in it. Like all the voice performances are really good, but it's just like the text of The Raven.
Yeah,
basically.
right. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
I wonder, have they done anything like that since? I feel like the closest they've done is like the Rear Window episode.
I have no idea. I haven't caught up with The Simpsons in recent years, but I used to listen to that episode. I used to listen to the audio of that Simpsons episode so much that I knew the entire like The Raven off by heart.
Yeah, right.
Which is, you know, obviously the coolest thing you can have when you're a teenager is to be able to recite Edgar Allan Poe.
Hey, why not? There's a whole subculture of that, and it's called goth.
Well, I wasn't on Tumblr at the time.
No.
It would have been totally useless to me.
Oh my God, you would have been revered as queen of Tumblr if people had known you were walking around quoting and memorizing The Simpsons doing Edgar Allan Poe.
Reciting Poe, I would have been known as that Poe bitch.
Yeah, that Poe over there. Teapot.
Poe. Yeah, it's just... Yeah, I do... The Raven is, I would say, my favourite poem, if I had a favourite. Poetry.
Poetry.
Oh wow, he was
House
made.
of Horror.
He was made for it.
Poetry House of Horror. Poetry House of Horror.
Easy.
Well, I mean, look, he was Edgar Allan Poe and not Edgar Allan Short Store.
And he wasn't Edgar Allan prose.
Well, he was.
Sometimes. But,
Sometimes.
yeah. I mean, he started out as Edgar Allan Poetry,
Yeah.
and then went into Edgar Allan prose. Yeah.
Poetry.
Yeah. And then, who knows what would happen down the line? He could have
don't
been
know.
Edgar Allan
Screenwriter.
screenwriter. Yeah.
Because when was he born? When was Edgar Allan Poe born? And when did he die? There's the 2 facts about his life that I would like to know. Right now, go on, get it up.
I'm going to get it out exactly because I don't know.
Find it.
So, born 1809,
Great.
died 1849.
Oh, I don't think he could have become a screenwriter.
R.I. Poe.
All right, Poe.
Anything to plug, Ben Volchok?
I think by the time this episode comes out, I'll be allowed to say that I'm doing a show at the Perth Fringe Festival, which is in Perth. It's
Shocking.
late January, early February. I guess keep an eye out on my social media. Mostly Instagram is where I am. You can also find me on Facebook just under my name. And yeah, I'll be posting stuff about live shows that I do. I have a show called The Ceremony, which is kind of like an improvised ritual. Just sometimes funny, sometimes poignant.
Always brilliant.
Always brilliant. Thank you, Lisa. Very absurd, but also very real. And yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing at the moment. And you can find out where that is and when that's happening on my social media.
Keep up to date with all things Volchok.
That's right.
Thank you, Ben.
Thanks for having me on again. This was probably the only one of these I've done that's been an actually good film.
Well, yeah, because I think the 2 that you've done have both been
I've done 3. I've done
Snide and Prejudice.
Faust, Love of
Oh,
the
Faust.
Damned,
That's right. Yes.
which was awful.
Yeah.
Snide and Prejudice, which was okay. And then the Billy the Kid...
the Butch Cassidy.
Butch
yeah.
and Sundance one, which was
Yeah. Well, a peek behind
shocking.
a peek behind the curtain is that I asked Ben, dear listener, to do because I didn't realize that the Butch Cassidy movie does have a sequel, which is Butch versus Sundance. And I thought, well, it would make the most sense to have Ben do the sequel, and he flat out refused.
I just couldn't. I don't think even for a joke, even for a bit, even for the sake of
Content,
continuity. I don't think I could sit through that again. It was just so empty.
Yeah, it was not great. I haven't actually watched it yet. The sequel may be fucking amazing.
Let me know if I'm wrong. Let me know if for whatever miracle of science and arts, this sequel is even if it's better.
Yeah.
Let me know if it's enough better to warrant watching it.
Butch Cassidy 2.
Yeah.
Even Butcher. All right. Goodbye, Ben. And most importantly, goodbye forever, Dr. Onions.
Bye.
Okay. Damn it.